The CISSP exam uses computerized adaptive testing, also known as CAT. Previously, the CISSP exam used to be linear in nature, which basically means that you had a certain set of questions and there was no adaptive element. But now the exam adapts itself to the candidate's skill level so that it can zero in on the precise skill level of the candidate. Let's see how it actually works. So you'll have 3 hours and you'll be answering somewhere between 100 to 150 questions. So the exam is going to stop once the scoring engine has precisely determined your skill level. Now you're graded on the difficulty of questions that you answer. So this is quite different from the linear exam in which every question had equal weight. So in the CAT exam, you'll be graded on the difficulty of questions you'll answer. So the more difficult a question that you answer, the more points you'll score. Out of the 100 to 150 questions that you answer, there would be 25 unscored experimental questions. Now these questions are introduced by IC² so that they can be used in subsequent iterations of the CISSP exam. However, it is not your job to try to guess which are these questions. They'll be mixed within the normal scored ones. So you'll just have to treat each question as if it's a scored question. Now the exam always starts with a question that is well below the passing standard, and if you answer it correctly, the difficulty level would increase. And the more difficult questions you answer, the more points you will score. So the subsequent questions are adaptive in the CAT exam. So this is where the computerized adaptive part comes in. So based on your last response, so for example, if it was an easy question and you answered it correctly, the next question would be difficult. But let's say if you incorrectly answered a very difficult question, the next question would be slightly easier, but you'll also be scoring less points. You should also remember that the CAT exam is quite different from the linear paper-based exam. In the CAT exam, once you have submitted an answer, you cannot go back and revisit it. And that is because the exam is adaptive. It is going to pose you the next question based on your last response. So once you have submitted the response, you cannot go back. Eventually, the algorithm zeroes in on the candidate's ability. So by varying these difficulty levels of the questions and based on your response, the exam adapts itself and kind of zooms in or zeroes in to your precise skill level. Let's see visually how the computerized adaptive testing works. So on the y-axis we have the score, on the x-axis we have questions. And this is the passing threshold, which means if you hit it, then it means that you have cleared your CISSP exam. Now there are two major milestones. The first one comes at the 100 questions mark, and the last one comes at the 150 questions mark. Now this is a hard line, which means that the exam is definitely going to stop here. Now the way it works is that initially you're asked an easy question. If you answer it correctly, your score moves up. But you won't get a lot of points, even if you answer it correctly, because it's an easy question. The next question would be more difficult, but if you answer it correctly, as you can see, you're gaining more points for the same question. But if you answer a question incorrectly, you won't be getting any score. And if you notice this line, you're gradually moving towards the 100 questions mark. So the next question would be slightly easier because the exam adapted itself and gave you an easier question since you made a mistake in the last one. So once you've hit the 100 questions mark, the exam is going to try to determine if you have hit the threshold, passing threshold, or if your score is way below. So in that case, you may even fail at that point. But in most cases, the exam continues. And if you hit the 150 question mark, the exam is going to make the final decision. However, the exam may stop at any point between 100 to 150 questions if you hit the threshold or if your score falls way below a certain threshold. Now, a couple of tips for computerized adaptive testing. So even if you get the full 150 questions, you still have roughly 1 minute and 6 seconds for each question, which is quite a reasonable time. You have sufficient time to read every question twice at least, think about the different options and then, make your decision. You should always take some time to answer the question, as obviously you cannot go back and change it. You should also keep in mind that when you're preparing for the CISSP exam, you have to score above proficiency in all domains. So even if you clear 7 domains, but if you fail in one domain, you won't be able to clear your CISSP exam. And that's a noteworthy point, because when you're preparing, you should give equal importance to all the domains, regardless if they have 10% weight or 15% weight. Also, please do not waste your energy and concentration trying to guess whether a question is experimental or not. I guess the silver lining here is that if you find a question which is, really out of the ordinary, it doesn't make any sense, none of the answers make any sense, then, you can consider it perhaps as experimental and, answer it to your best ability and move on. Don't let any question get to your nerves, because you don't want one question to affect your subsequent answering ability.